Hi guys, I'm Kristen. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. I've got my tea steeping, I'm in my comfy chair, and that means I'm ready to talk about my recent reads. So I recently switched over from doing a more standard monthly wrap-up video to more of a recent read style wrap-up video. So my plan here was to do at least a a recent reads video every time I finish 5 books. I do have a little bit over 5 this time, and that's just because I've been sick. I had a cold earlier this week and I was not in the mood to film any videos, and so I'm actually at 7 books right now. Anyway, I'll get into my wrap-up for the books that I've read recently. The first of which was Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. This is the second book in the Liveship Traders series. Oh my gosh, I am in love with the Liveship Traders series. I won't talk too much about the plot because this is the second book in a series and it's sort of like the second trilogy in a universe. The initial setup for this series is a family of merchant traders, and in this world there are these live ships that are made from wizard wood, and after like 3 generations have owned and died on the ship becomes sentient. And one of our main characters, Althea, grew up on her family's ship, and when her father dies, she expects to inherit the ship, and she doesn't. It's given to her sister and captained by the sister's kind of horrible, worst character ever, Kyle, her brother-in-law. But there are so many more characters, other people related to her and not so related, including a swarthy, possibly sociopathic pirate. Some of the things that were so special about Mad Ship, even compared to Ship of Magic, the first book in this series that I did absolutely love, I just love Mad Ship so much more, is seeing how all of the connections and relationships between the characters have changed and developed from the first book to the second book. In the first book, we were sort of all over the map in a few different locations, whereas in Mad Ship, we've sort of settled into 2 main locations, following a bunch of different people, and so we were able to get an extremely well-rounded sense or perception of what is happening. One of the amazing things is that you care so much about all of the characters involved, even ones who are kind of horrible, that you start wanting things to really work out for your characters, but sometimes that means something that can't happen. Like, for example, I want something to work out for Althea, but for that to happen, it would be bad for another character, but I also want things to work out for that character too. And so you get this sense of confusion of how you want events to unfold, even though you know that they're going to unfold either in the way you expect or in the way that you don't expect, and you're going to be heartbroken no matter what that looks like, because that's just Robin Hobb. She'll just get you right in the feels. The story is starting to go in such an interesting direction, and everything is starting to knit together, including some of the more magical and fantastical elements. I'm so excited to see how things pan out in the Ship of Destiny. This, I think, was my only 5-star rating that I've given out in quite a while, and definitely one of my new favorite books. The next book that I finished was The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik. I won't say too much about the plot, but this is the second book in the Scholomance series, which follows the main character, Elle, who is sort of destined to become an evil sorceress, or like a maleficer, I'm not sure. But she doesn't want to become evil. And in the first book, she kind of begrudgingly befriends this character, Orion, who is more of our hero type character. And they have kind of this funny, angsty, pretend hate each other friendship that grows in the first book, and they are both living inside this school called the Scholomance, and it is like a sentient school that is kind of evil and actively trying to kill all of the kids. I do really love Elle and Orion. I love those characters. If I would say a flaw of this book is that there wasn't enough Elle and Orion character interactions for the first third of the book. But it was also sort of trying to set up some of the magical problems that were happening in this book. And I just feel like where we left off the story with Elle and Orion at the end of A Deadly Education, I wanted to see Elle and Orion interacting together at the beginning of that first book, and it took a really long, he was mentioned, he was around, but their interactions were not the focus of the writing for the first third of the book, and I missed that. The writing style is very weird here, where Elle is telling you her story. I do kind of like it. She makes these really sarcastic jokes in the writing, which I think is hilarious, and I really like that. The one thing that I don't like about the writing story is that Elle is telling you these anecdotes about the various monsters or the school or politics or the world or the magic, and I felt like a lot of the things that she was ranting to at us about were things that were already established facts from the first book that we didn't need to rehear in the same extent or frequency that we did in this second book. The ending went in a really interesting direction plot-wise that I was not expecting. Like, the decision that is made by the kids to deal with the problem that's happening is quite drastic, perhaps something that the children in the school shouldn't be deciding. But the final moment, the single little incident that happens at the very end of the page, we're talking like the last 2 sentences of the book here, has taken up permanent residence in my brain and has been playing on repeat ever since I finished this book. And I have some feelings and some thoughts about that. Yeah. I would say if you didn't like A Deadly Education, you're not gonna like The Last Graduate. Everything that possibly could have been a concern for you to not have liked in the first book is still there in the second book. If you've read this book, please comment below. I would love to chat. Okay, next up I read For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. This is a young adult fantasy book following a main character whose nickname is Red. I'm forgetting her real name. And this was pitched as sort of a Little Red Riding Hood retelling. In this world of the princesses, the first daughter is for the crown, or for the throne, sorry, and the second daughter is for the wolf. And at a certain age, she is sort of sacrificed to like the wolf or the forest. It's at this point that the story sort of becomes Beauty and the Beast. And that's maybe one thing that I would say if you're going into this expecting like a hardcore Little Red Riding Hood retelling. I would say that the plot beats are a lot more in line with a Beauty and the Beast story. There's definitely a lot of like red cape and wolf imagery in the book, an abundance of that. Atmospherically, this is Little Red Riding Hood. Plot-wise, it's Beauty and the Beast. This is very atmospheric, very like dark, foresty, as I said, kind of magical, eerie, ominous. There was a playlist that I was listening to on Spotify. I'll put it up. I think it was called like Lush and Ethereal. I would say this one really suited this book for the most part. One of the actually like the cited comparisons on the synopsis for this book was Naomi Novik's Uprooted. And I generally feel like if a book is being marketed as like fall vibes, foresty, woodsy, I feel like Uprooted is one that it always gets compared to, but I actually think that the comparison to Uprooted is pretty bang on with this book in the like feel and vibe, but also the forest elements that are really heavy in the second half of Uprooted, like that whole plot and kind of ominous, eerie, something's going on with this like dark forest is definitely also present in For the Wolf. There was like a weird situation with the sister. So we do get points of view or perspectives from the sister who's like for the throne. We get her side of the story. She's really, really struggling with like the fact that her world, their religion, the crown, whatever, like let her sister be sacrificed. She's not dealing well, and that story goes in a very interesting and dark direction that I was not expecting. Something that might be a possible problem here for some people is that I also think there was a little bit of miscommunication trope used throughout. While it would have been quite info dumpy if, say, Red had showed up and the wolf was like, hey, listen, this is the sitch, it would have been info dumpy a la like Feyre talking to Alice in the middle of A Court of Thorns and Roses. Like, that wouldn't have been great. It just feels like it would have gone completely differently if they just had been upfront with Red about the situation and the history and the magic. This book does generally have young adult vibes, but I would say that it is a little bit more ominous and a little bit more dark, and there's some graphic sexual content here. I think this could probably work as a new adult category book. Anyway, it's apparently the start of a series, so I will be keeping my eye out for the second book. I did really enjoy it, although it did have some flaws. It was absolutely that ominous, atmospheric, environmental, dark, woodsy fall vibe that I was promised. I'm sorry the lighting is really odd today, like it's so intermittent, cloudy coverage. The next book that I read was Sweet Filthy Boy by Christina Lauren. I don't feel great about this. This is like the mistake of old where I'm just like not quite ready to dive into the next thing that I was planning to read, which was Harrow the Ninth. And so I read this very old Christina Lauren book about 3 girls who graduate and go to Vegas. It's like a post-graduation celebration, and they meet 3 guys, and all 3 of them get married in Vegas. And this first book follows the couple who stay married, who don't immediately get annulled. And the guy in this case is from France, and he convinces the girl to go back to live with him in Paris for the summer before she has to start grad school. It was fine. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this book and the next book, which I did read. But I just think that like when I am not looking for a big commitment, I go onto Scribd and I see what's available. And because I was reading a bunch of stuff like this before, all of my Scribd recommendations is stuff like this. And so I'm like, yeah, that looks fine and easy to read. But like, I don't feel great about it in the sense that like, it felt like a little bit of a waste of time. It's not that I don't want to read romance books ever. I just like, I don't want to waste my time with romance books that are not anything that amazing, and prioritize more books that I think that I'm really, really gonna love in the future. So this was a good like, okay, I fell off the wagon. I did it again, but a good reminder that this isn't what I'm looking for in reading, and maybe have better romance books lined up for when I am in the mood for them. Okay, so then I read Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which is the second book in the Locked Tomb trilogy or series. Actually, I think we just found out that there is like a 4th book coming out, so I don't know if that's going to be the last one, so I'll just say series now. I read Gideon the Ninth last year, and I thought it was like a wild, fun ride. It was not what I was expecting, and neither was Harrow the Ninth. If anything, I liked Harrow the Ninth way more than I thought I was going to. I was really nervous about the second person perspective, which 70% of this book is. I was really worried that this book was going to be nonsensical, and it wasn't. Like, it still is crazy. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, the book runs in sort of 2 different timelines. There is sort of like the post what happened in the first book timeline, where stuff is going weird with Harrow, and that is the part of the story that is written from second person perspective. I will say that it was weird for like 2 chapters, and then I got completely used to it. The other timeline that is happening is sort of this like alternate timeline retelling of the first book, of the events of the first book, and does something different with that. What I will say about this book and this maybe series at large is that like, I watched a review for Gideon the Ninth yesterday that was just like, what's the purpose of this book? And yeah, I mean, valid question, because you don't really have a sense, even up until now, like having finished Harrow the Ninth, I still don't really know what this series is about. And like, there's a bunch of stuff that's happening that you're just like, oh, this doesn't make sense to me. And I think that in order to read these books and to enjoy them, you have to be okay with things not making sense. Like if you are someone who really, really likes, I guess, control and likes to be able to like understand and follow and knit everything together and make sense of everything, this is not going to be the series for you, because there's so much that we don't know about the world and the magic system and like this universe and what all is even happening. And you just sort of have to be okay with that and like go with the flow and enjoy the process for what it is. If you have read Gideon the Ninth and you're not sure whether or not to read Harrow the Ninth, if you're okay with the fact that you didn't understand the magic system or like the world that they were in, and they're more like curious about what will happen with Harrow's story, read Harrow the Ninth. It's worth checking out. Don't let the like, oh my god, this was crazy, it's in second person perspective, don't let that scare you away, because it is weird, but it's like fun weird. Oh my gosh, I had Harrow the Ninth here. I even haven't taken it back to the library this whole time because I was like, oh wait, and do the wrap up with it. Okay, well that's ruined. I'm not gonna re-say everything that I've said so far. What was I saying? I am so impressed that Tamsin Muir has like the brain capacity and wherewithal and overarching vision to have written what this was. Holy smokes. This was so cool. And very atmospheric and like October, dark, gory Halloween vibes. Okay, and then the last book that I read just recently is A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow. And this is a novella, and it is a Sleeping Beauty retelling. It is sort of a modern magical realism, I think, like twist that leans heavily into the comparisons to Sleeping Beauty. Like, it talks about Sleeping Beauty a lot. I listened to this as an audiobook using Scribd. I would definitely recommend if you have Scribd and you want to check this out. Our main character, I think her name is Zinnia, is someone who developed a medical condition that has no cure, and she isn't expected to live beyond her, or much beyond her 21st birthday. On her 21st birthday, she pricks her finger on a spinning wheel and is transported to another realm where she meets with Primrose, Aurora, whatever, herself. I thought this was such a cool way to do a retelling because, like I said, like it really leans into the comparison. It's sort of what the whole book is about, like this like alternate possible realities of Sleeping Beauty. I think that it did that urban fantasy fairy tale retelling quite well, where you have this like modern character who is like spunky and cool and knows about the fairy tale in which we are retelling. It was also like a very pro-feminism vibe retelling. I feel like not the moral of the story, but like one of the morals of the story is like, who needs a prince anyway? And from a like world building character perspective in the span of a novella, I thought it was done quite well. Like, we got enough of the backstory at the beginning, as well as she would make little small comments along the way to fill you in on her life or some of her personality or how she's been dealing with what she's been dealing with her chronic illness. And it was just enough. Like, I felt like the story was just enough. It didn't need to be longer. I didn't feel like we were missing out on anything. I didn't feel like there wasn't enough of the history or the world or the magic explained. Like, it was just kind of a perfect amount for a novella. You got a great sense of the characters and who they were and why they did the things that they did. So this was really great. I actually really enjoyed it. I have not read anything else by Alex Harrow, although I know that she's also the author of 10,000 Doors of January, which I've sort of had on like a theoretical TBR for a while now. And this made me definitely think about possibly putting that on hold at the library and checking 10,000 Doors of January out at some point in the future. Anyway, well, that is it. Those are all of my recent reads. Let me know if there are any of these books that you have read before. I'd love to hear what you thought of them, and let me know what your most recent read is and if you enjoyed it. I will see you in my next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That really helps me out. Or comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.